Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Communities Committee. Is it too late for Happy New Year? Well, Happy New Year to you guys and everyone at home. I'd like to remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphone when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, just a wee reminder that all of the reports are online, the public committee reports I should say are online, and the specific recommendations that we're debating today are also available on the Council's website. Have we got any apologies or substitutes?
Thanks, Conveners. With apologies for Councillor Jill Scott, with Councillor Heather Doran as substitute.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Okay then, nope, we'll move on then to agenda item 3, which is the minutes. If we look at agenda item 3A, which is the previous meeting, do we submit for approval the correct record? And B, the Arbroath Harbour Joint Consultative Committee. We're happy with that? Okay, then we move on to agenda item 4. Now, this is a request to speak. A request to speak has been received from Mr Ian Nimmo-White in relation to the petition received in connection with residents' concerns with the speeding of vehicles at Gowan Bank Forfar, which is agenda item 6. Mr White is requesting that the committee considers one or more of the options to help address the residents' concerns. Do the members agree to the request? Agree. So what I would like to do is we'll take this just before agenda item 6. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 5, and that's the Angus Council Speed Limit Strategy Proposed Review. I'll submit to Graham to present this one.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, everyone. This report advises members of consultations, publications and funding announcements by Scottish Government to support the Scottish Government Road Safety Framework to 2030, which set out a vision for Scotland to have the best road safety performance in the world by 2030 and an ambitious long-term goal where no one is seriously injured or killed on our roads by 2050. The report recommends that in light of these publications and that a review of the Angus Council Speed Limit Strategy is undertaken, and it's recommended that a member officer working group is established to undertake the review and report at an appropriate time back to the committee.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any questions, any comments? Councillor Duff?
Sorry, Convener, I'm a bit slow. It was really a question, and just to ask Mr Daly, there was a bit of discussion, I suppose, at Transport Scotland level for some time about whether the Scottish Government would do something in terms of a blanket national thing, or whether the councils individually were going to do something. Where exactly are we on that one now? I mean, I know they're consulting on trunk road speed limits, etc. But essentially, what our review focusing on in built-up areas, or are we extending that review beyond built-up areas? I just kind of a wee bit of clarity there.
Yes, there's been no move to apply a blanket across the whole Scotland 20-mile-an-hour limit. You may have read in Wales that was an approach that was taken there. Officers from our Roads and Transportation Service have been in contact with Transport Scotland officers, and it is detailed in the report actually. The different councils in Scotland are taking slightly different approaches. I think the examples that are given in the report include Aberdeen, Dundee and Perth and Kinross, in terms of some are going down the more blanket approach, where others it's perhaps more targeted. So as it stands, there isn't, as far as I'm aware, there is no intention to apply one size fits all across the whole of Scotland, and there is discretion for local authorities, and there is funding to support local authorities, and setting up this member officer working group will hopefully help us find a consensus on the way forward. I would add that while the adoption of 20-mile-an-hour is a critical matter, and the next report relates in part to that as well, the speed limit strategy goes beyond just that and there's a lot of matters that I'm sure a lot of them come into your inbox, but we receive a lot of requests in terms of how we review speed across our full road network. Again, in the report, the speed limit strategy has served us well. It's been in place since 2008, but I think it's a good time to review the whole strategy as a whole.
Thanks, Graham. And that was certainly something we picked up at the conveners' briefings when we were looking at the 2008 strategy. We thought it was a good time to look at things. Councillor Devine.
Thanks. So, Mr Daly, I just wonder if you have got any idea of a timeline for this working group, for the member officer working group. It sounds as if there's quite a lot to be looked at. So would you have any ideas? I know it's difficult to say how MOGs are going to go, actually.
Yeah, the term we used in the report was report back at an appropriate time. And part of that was that give the MOG, once it's formed, to consider what the scope and the terms of reference specifically is for the group. And I think then we would have a firmer idea, but a realistic timescale. And I think, again, the members of the MOG would be able to have a say in terms of what is a realistic timescale in terms of number of meetings. So rather than presenting to committee and saying to members, we think it should be 3 meetings and it should be 6 months, we'd like to get the involvement of the MOG and set in that time frame. Of course, we'll try and do things as expediently as we can, but once the MOG's been set up, we'll have a better idea.
Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much, conveners. I think this 20 mile an hour is actually be applauded because not only hopefully will it save lives, but it'll actually cut down on fuel consumption. The one concern I have in this, it says it's going to be policed. The existing 28 mile an hour limits that we've got in, and I know in my ward, there have been several complaints of people exceeding this, but you know, the policing this is quite a difficult task, it appears. Is there any sort of extra resources going to be put into this from Police Scotland or other agencies?
I would refer to the report, specifically paragraph 5.16, where we do advise the Police Scotland have made their position quite clear, and this isn't just Angus, but my understanding it is nationally that, and again, I've got to be careful because I can't speak for Police Scotland, but it is in the public domain that they are targeting their resources elsewhere where they consider it as higher risks. But that's not to say they wouldn't look to enforce in a 20 mile an hour speed area, but it's where it's shown to be an identified road safety issue, which usually means there's an accident record, or there is a primary school in the area. But my understanding from Police Scotland's perspective is that they do have a limited resource and they need to target where it's most needed. So this will be part of the MOG's consideration, is that going forward we need to accept that we will be relying on self-policing almost within these areas, that where the road users accept and understand and respect where there are 20s, and it is very likely that Police Scotland will only intervene where there is a high risk, and that can be demonstrated.
Councillor Brace.
Yes, thanks, convener. Just to say that the proposed MOG, if it's agreed to by this committee, yes, road safety is of paramount importance, but it's not just about road safety. Speed limits can have an impact on the quality of life of residents of a community. If traffic is slowed down, it gives residents a greater feeling of safety and security, even if it's only in their minds. And so I think that it's not just about road safety, this MOG. I would like it to be looking at the whole holistic approach towards communities, that and if we're going to be making recommendations, we should take into account not just road safety, but quality of life of residents and communities. Thanks.
Councillor Doran.
Thanks. Mine's more of a comment if we're on comments now.
Yeah, we're on comments, Councillor
Yeah,
Dolan, you go.
just to say that I think this is really welcome to have this review. Speeding is one of the things that is raised with me in my ward consistently over and over and over again. And I think it's right to review where we are and bring people together to discuss that.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I agree. I feel that a MOG could look at this. I do have slight concerns about the timescales of what came out of the MOG or what would come out of the MOG to implement these things. We just need to look at other things like the pavement parking and how long that took to implement. And I also feel, when we're looking at things, looking to have some form of traffic calming measures, we do get told regularly that there's not a high history of accidents at that areas. But what people seem to be missing the point is that accidents are only recorded, if police are like in attendance. So there's many accidents that do happen on our roads that aren't recorded by the police. Thus, it doesn't give a true reflection of it. So, but I certainly look forward to a MOG coming to fruition. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Cowdery.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I also welcome the fact that there's going to be a MOG, hopefully, if we vote for that. And I think one of the reasons for that is this is quite a nuanced issue. In a lot of bits of my ward, it's around entrance and exit speeds in and out of villages, more than it is about the blanket, in my opinion, as I've heard from constituents, more than it is about the speed actually in the village itself. So I'm confident that the people on the MOG will be able to have those sort of nuanced discussions and hopefully come up with a really constructive solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. Any further comments? Councillor Duff.
Thanks, convener. Yeah, I think I welcome the setting up of the MOG as well. One thing I'd like to raise with you is the speed limit in rural roads and perhaps unclassified rural roads. I'll tell you why I raise it, because we've been on perhaps a couple of DMRC appeals out in rural settings. And let's say somebody wants to develop some housing in a particular area, and the roads officer is saying, well, technically this is a 60-mile-an-hour road, and therefore visibility splays, etc., have got to be set for that 60-mile. Now, the last one we went to was somewhere up in the hills above Invergowrie. It wouldn't be the sort of road that I would have driven along at 60. I think 40 would probably have been a sensible speed. I know that Perth and Kinross have got this idea of rural roads which they put are walking, cycling, safer routes, and they are 40s. And I think for unclassified roads, so I'm not talking about A and B class, unclassified roads, it would certainly be worth looking at that idea. I think there's a lot of merit in it, because really these are roads that are definitely not suitable for 60, but at the moment they have the national speed limit. And I think it does cause issues where people want to develop, and the roads officers are giving us their professional advice, which is someone could be doing 60 here. You can't have an entrance there because the stopping distance is too large, etc. So I just like to raise that. I accept that maybe complicates your task a little bit, but I think we have talked about it before, and I think it would certainly be worth looking at.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any further comments? Okay, then we're ready to move to the recommendations. The recommendations are to note the consultation, publications and funding announcements from the government, note the National Safe System approach, agree the council speed limit strategy should be reviewed, and agree to establish a member officer working group. Do we all agree and note those things? Agreed. Now we need to nominate members to sit on the member officer group. So that's 3 from the admin, 2 from the non-admin and 1 from the non-aligned. So the 3 nominations from the administration group are myself, Councillor Shepherd and Councillor Braze. Councillor Melville to second that. From the opposition group, do we have Councillor Stewart?
Convener, yet nominate myself and Councillor McFarlane.
And do you have a seconder? Councillor Fotheringham. And from the non-aligned, it's Councillor Doran. Councillor Kerry?
Yeah, I'm just going to propose Councillor Doran, particularly with her TACTRAN involvement. I think that would make perfect sense. Thank you.
And we've got a seconder, Councillor Speed.
I'll second that, thanks.
Okay, so the MOG is made up of myself, Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Braze, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Doran, and who was the last one? Councillor McFarlane. Right, there we go. So we've got the MOG set up. But what I would say is for everybody that's on the committee and or not on the committee, if you do want to feed in like Councillor Duff has done, send us an email in, make sure the members are aware of the issues that you want to be discussed. This is obviously a big agenda item, and we'll see from the next one why it is a big agenda item. So yeah, any input's welcome and we can feed that into the MOG process. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item 6. So we've now got a request to speak from Mr. Nimmo White. Mr. Nimmo White, do you want to come up to the table? So, Mr. Nimmo White, you've got 10 minutes, and then if you're okay with it, are you happy to take questions from the committee after the presentation? So you've got 10 minutes to make your presentation. You don't have to take the whole time, but if you want to, you can. And are you happy to take questions after your presentation from members, yeah? Okay, just whenever you're ready, we'll be ready to listen to you.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Hi. Thank you, first of all, for affording me this opportunity to speak on behalf of Gowan Bank residents. If I start to mumble or fluff my lines, I hope you'll make allowances. I'm not used to platforming in a political theatre. I'm more comfortable with audiences when I'm reading from my poetry and short stories. Right, so I thought I'd begin just by giving a little background to how the speeding petition came about. When I finally retired, which was at the age of 70, I moved my wife into Forfar, and it's the best move I think we've ever made, without a word of flattery. I started to walk my dog at that time, and I would either walk him down the road to what's called the Mossy to let him off, and then back again, or I'd go up to the other side, the Rosy Roadie, and walk him back again. And I couldn't help but notice that at both ends of Gowan Bank, there was quite a lot of traffic coming through the 30-mile-an-hour warning signs, and obviously disregarding them, really. They were maintaining the speeds that they had before they were coming in. And I asked, over a period of time, I asked fellow residents there, in the later days when they were out in their gardens, how they felt. And I was quite struck by the amount of anger there was and concern. So some of them were moaning that they tried to do something about it individually and didn't feel they got what they wanted. So I said to them, well, how would you feel about a petition? Well, they pretty much all went for it, the idea, and then it was up to me to put it together. Now, I didn't know when I did this petition, when I got this petition together, I didn't know that you had to have 50 signatories for a petition to be valid. I knew nothing about that. What I had done was I'd confined my visits to the people who lived along the road, not anywhere else, you know. the ones that were affected immediately. And I could only have got a maximum of 57. 6 people declined, so I ended up with 51. And so it's a pure coincidence that there were 51 signatures. Lucky for us, I suppose, but there you go. Now, I think that the problem of speeding seemed to get worse during COVID, and in particular the lockdown, because obviously in the lockdown some drivers felt they had the road to themselves, and they possibly picked up bad habits which they haven't laid down yet. They just got used to going at quite a fast speed. Now, we know that there have been reductions to 20 at other communities, like Lunenhead and Kingsmuir, for example. Even Colliston, which is a little further away on the way to Arbroath, you only get reduced to 20 when the school's going in and out. But it's quite remarkable. I don't know if any of you drive through these communities, but it's quite remarkable how sedately the traffic goes. But that's certainly not what happens at Gowan Bank. It seems to be a place where some vehicles can speed. Now, there's been a number of, I've been on the receiving end of a number of negative comments from people. I call them negative. One would be reduction of the limit to 20 will make no difference. People will still go at 40 to 50 mile an hour. This is absolute nonsense. Anybody who drives a car decently knows fine that when you go into an unfamiliar community and you see a 20 sign, it gives you a wee bit of a shock, you know. But you log it in your mind, and then the next time you're coming into that community, you're ready to do 20 plus, you know. Another one comment I've had is no change will be made until someone is killed. Well, I'm not going to do that statement any credibility by answering it. I think it speaks for itself. Another person who, maybe I shouldn't say this, but he was very high up in Angus Council at one time. When I spoke to him about it, he said, "You know what petitions do, don't you?" Then he answered his own question. Nothing. That was not encouraging, I don't mind telling you. Coming as it did from somebody like that. Now, I'd like to, you need to keep me right on time, by the way. Somebody's figured out who it was. Now, there was a response by Roads Department to the Courier after we had been photographed and treated like film stars, you know. The Courier was obviously pressed, you know, sorry, the Roads Department were obviously pressed for an answer. And I think the answer went something along the lines of, well, we've taken a survey in August and we come out with a mean of between 29 and 34 miles an hour. So there's no problem. Now, I find that interesting because I didn't submit the petition until the end of August. Now, perhaps they had done the survey routinely in August before the petition. But certainly, if they did it in August, then they must have had to move very quickly after the petition was submitted. I think it was submitted on the 27th of August. I knew I would lose the place. Deal with the officer's response. I think, though, that the main thing from the roads officer's statement is that we don't imagine this speeding. This speeding, I'm talking about the residents here, this speeding takes place every day, it takes place all day, and it takes place regularly. That we know what's going past our houses. We also have police statistics, and I think this was for the year of 2023, where the statistics tell us that there were 900, something like 900 injuries to people on our Scottish roads because of speeding. More than 100 of them proved to be fatal. Now, some of us are more aware of that than others. I know it's history, it was 20 years ago, but our own first daughter-in-law had only been married to our son for 6 weeks when all she did was try to go over a pedestrian crossing. And she was hit by a laddie who was doing twice the speed that he should have been doing. Now, speeding kills people. Let me make that quite clear. It also causes pain to the victims' families. As I say, some of us will be more aware of that than others. If there's anything that people want to go over with me about the petition itself, I'd be quite happy to answer questions. But thank you again for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Nimmo-White. And the first thing I would just mention on the back of it is the idea that the petition hasn't got you anywhere. We're actually looking at our speed limit strategy as part of part of the representations. Every single elected member has had an Angus Council about speeding. So I would suggest that part of that process is down to the fact that we've received petitions and from the likes of yourselves and your residents. I'd just like to open it up to any questions from elected members on the committee, if they've got any questions for Mr. Nimmo-White. Any questions? Looks like there's no questions for you. If you want to just grab your seat back at the back there, sure. Thank you very much. And we'll go back onto the main agenda. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can go any time. But yeah, so the agenda we'll go on to get the presentation from the officers. Then the council will have a Q&A on that, a couple of comments probably on that, and then after that, that's probably when you would look to leave. No, no worries. Okay, Graham, do you want to bring forward the report?
Thank you, Convener. As you've just...
Councillor McLaren? Could you just pop your microphone so we can hear it at home?
Yes, just a notice of an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I do. It's Councillor Devine.
Councillor Devine. Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll hear from Graham first to present the report, and then we'll go to the general discussion, and then we'll bring in the amendments. Graham.
Thank you, Convener. As you just heard, this report is in connection with residents' concern and a petition received with regards to speeding of vehicles on the B9113 in Gilbank, Forfar. The report details findings of engineering investigations and brings forward an options appraisal as presented in Appendix 2 of the report on potential mitigation measures to be deployed if deemed appropriate. And I would just highlight the comprehensive nature of that appendix and options appraisal, and hopefully that provides some reassurance to members, but also to Mr. Nimmo-White and the residents that your petition did have an effect, and that officers within the traffic team have done a very diligent job in presenting these options, so members are well informed in terms of the next steps. It is recommended that committee agrees to adopt option 1, which is to do nothing at this time, taking into account the evidence regarding speeds and accidents and the proposals that we have just agreed in the previous report to this one. And I would just highlight that this is on the proviso the situation would be reviewed following the conclusion of the speed limit strategy review by the Members Officer Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Now we open it up to questions on the original report. So are there any questions in the room? Nope. Any comments? Nope. Okay. Do we want to hear the amendment? Councillor McLaren?
Yes, thank you, Convener. My amendment is to agree to note recommendations 1, 2 and 3. And in terms of recommendation 4, to adopt option 2 to reduce the speed limit from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour, as outlined in Appendix 2. This would introduce a consistency within other village settlements around Forfar.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Is everybody happy with the way the amendment's been presented? Don't need to see a copy or anything like that, no? Okay, any questions for Graham in relation to the amendment? Councillor Devine.
Do you want me to?
We've already, I think, done that. I think I'm just opening up to questions on the amendment for Graham.
Okay. I thought I'd be seconding it.
If you want to speak to it, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd just be quite happy to second the amendment because I feel the residents of Gowan Bank have been waiting for over 5 years to find a solution to their speeding problem. I remember them coming to the Community Council several years back and, well, they didn't get anywhere at that point. And as I said at the Scrutiny and Audit meeting when the petition was brought forward, there's a clear lack of consistency in the villages around Forfar. Because as Mr Nimmo White said, there's 20-mile-an-hour limits in Kingsmuir and Lunan Head, but not in Gowan Bank, where, you know, as in the other cases, there's a long straight stretch of road which seems to encourage the less socially conscious drivers to speed up. So I would agree that we try the 20-mile-an-hour limit as Councillor Clarn suggests and would ask members to support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. What I was looking to do was just open up to any questions on it and then if there's any further comments, just because of the nature of this specific topic. So that's great. Thank you, Councillor Devine. Any questions or comments in either relation to the original paper or the amendment? Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you. Yes, so it's a comment from me. I think from my perspective, the amendment makes sense for the reasons that the two Forfar councillors have just highlighted, and also something that Councillor Brays mentioned very eloquently earlier, which is it's not just about danger to life, although that's obviously key. It's about mental well-being, and for such a large majority of the people immediately impacted to have signed the petition, I think says a lot to me about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. I'll just come in here and then Councillor Melville in behind me. I just want to make it clear that I'll be proposing the recommendations as they are. That's not to dismiss the concerns from the community. The agree option 1 is specifically looking at providing a sort of universal result. And I need to be careful that if I'm going to be on a member officer working group, that I'm not tied into the Gowan Bank decision when it comes to trying to make recommendations across the whole constituency. So from a convener's point of view, having brought this forward, we would be looking at setting up the new speed limit strategy along the lines of how it benefits residents across the whole of Angus. And my concern would be if I support the amendment in this situation, that ties me up for dealing with matters in the MOG. Does that make sense? The idea is I don't want to be in a position where we've made a decision on Gowan Bank based on the information that we've got, but then we look at other areas and we are then having to make that same decision because I don't want to be called a hypocrite that I've said this is fine for one, but not fine for another potentially. Everybody in the chamber, I think, has agreed that 20-mile-an-hour speed limits are a good thing in principle. And it's for me about making sure, and Councillor McLaren said it actually, it's about getting a consistent approach. And that's what I'm trying to aim. So it's not to dismiss the concerns of Mr Nimmo White, and it's not to dismiss the concerns of the petition. That's why I'd be looking to support the original recommendations. But, like I say, the strength of feeling across the chamber, I think, is that the reason that we're bringing forward the review of speed limits is because of things like the petition that was brought forward by the residents. Councillor Melville.
Yes, thanks, Convener. And I'd also like to thank Mr Emma White for taking the time to speak to us today. I think I'm right in saying that while he was speaking, he said that 51 of a possible 57 residents signed the petition. That's as emphatic a demand from the residents as I think you could probably get in any sort of democratic exercise. I've always believed in self-determination for obvious reasons. And where there is demand for things like this, I do believe that the community should be empowered to help make that decision. So I will be voting for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Melville. Councillor Proctor.
Thanks very much, Convener. Yeah, I do feel through past experience, the time that it'll maybe take for this 20-mile-an-hour legislation to come in throughout Scotland and certainly throughout Angus is actually going to be, it's going to take quite a while. And I really do feel for the residents of Gowan Bank. We have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Westmuir and Kirriemuir, and that seems to work. And I do know the area of the Gowan Bank Road, it is straight, big straight road, and I do feel that we should support Councillor McLaren's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Any further comments? Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks, Mr Emma White, for your presentation. And I do have sympathy for the residents of the area, but I do also appreciate the comments of Convener. I think having an Angus-wide approach is a sensible way, and given the reviews ongoing, I have a certain sympathy for seeing that through before making any other decisions. I wonder if Mr Daly is concerned about a whole host of areas coming forward while the review is ongoing, if this one is successful.
Yes, I would say that that's part of a factor. In terms of a recommendation, it was that we do have a speed limit strategy that, as officers, we are working to that was agreed by members, and officers, that's what we are obliged to do. So the recommendation we've brought forward complies with the current speed limit strategy, and that is really evidence-based decision making. And the speed, I think it was a matter of days after we received the petition. It was something like, in fact, I think it was 10 days later, we did the speed survey. We looked at accident data, and there is an element that, as said in the report, this is by no means any different from many other areas where there are 30s across the whole of Angus. So I would say yes, it does set precedents that it could be followed elsewhere. There are implications. And it really just, that is another reason for the previous report, is that I think we do need to review so that going forward, it isn't almost all these 20-mile-an-hours come in creep, for want of a better expression, come into Angus. It's about doing it in a more organised, consistent fashion. The other thing to point out to members is that Scottish Government do have funding available to support the rollout of 20-mile-an-hours zones. So therefore, there are costs associated by changing the zones, and if we do it in a more piecemeal approach, then we aren't able to take advantage of the funding, whereas if we bring forward in a more organised fashion, we will receive the external from Scottish Government rather than having to meet this through our own general fund as well.
Councillor Brace.
Yes, thanks, Convener. We have an amendment and a seconder to that amendment, and you've said that you're supporting the recommendations, and I'll second you on that as Vice Convener of this committee. But to make it clear, and without usurping what the MOG might come up with, and certainly not predetermining that. It's just I listened very carefully to Mr. White's presentation. I had no questions for him because I am so well versed in this. It would be about 5 years ago when, serving as a Brecon councillor, the community council in Edzell asked that I pursue the possibility of getting a 20-mile-an-hour zone in Edzell. And I told them that if they could demonstrate that it was the wishes of the majority of people, then I would do everything I could to progress that. They did a survey, they did a petition basically, and they got an overwhelming response that they wanted a 20-mile-an-hour zone in Edsall, and I pursued that, as officers past and present will tell you, very vigorously and probably annoyingly so. In Edsall, regarding Edsall, it was decided, I think, that we would progress with a pilot project for a 20-mile-an-hour zone, and then COVID came in and usurped all that. And we landed up with a sort of a higgledy-piggledy situation, I suppose, when some villages have 20 miles an hour, some don't. And I think that the correct way to go about this is through the MOG, and that's why I'm supporting it. It's not because I don't have a great deal of sympathy with the idea that residents should have a much greater say in the speed limits for people who are travelling back and forward through their villages. So I will be seconding the convener on this, and I would just say though, and I think I'm correct in saying this, Councillor Duff said that, you know, there's a lot of things that this MOG could be considering, and it could turn out to be very lengthy. Well, I think I'm right in saying that if it's the wish of this committee, they can instruct the member officer working group to deal with 20 miles an hour in villages as a priority, and then deal with other matters. So I'll be seconding the convener on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yes, I thank Mr. Nimmo-White for his presentation, and I think it was quite powerful. I think I will support the convener's view at this point, because I think there are lots of anomalies across Angus. I can think of lots of villages which are 40, some are 20, some are 30, and there are quite a lot of time and discussion about these things. We're having one today. I think it would be better, ideally, to do it logically and consistently, and we just develop an overall strategy for built-up areas, and we come out with something, and then we do it once, and we've got everything consistent, and we don't have inconsistencies. I think that's one of the issues. I would also like you to look at rural roads, as I've mentioned. I'm talking about non-classified roads, effectively, the very small ones, where I think 60 is inappropriate, and I think there would be benefits to doing the sort of 40 speed limit for some of them. But yeah, I think for that reason, I think a logical approach I would support, and we clearly could have a member officer group with a first phase to look at the built-up areas in 20s, and then a second phase to look at other things. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. I fully welcome the MOG. However, I think for me it's really important that we bring this chapter to a close. And for the residents of Gowan Bank, it's been a 5-year wait, 5 years. And I think it would really be unfair to put them through, you know, this any longer. So I'm in support of the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Councillor Doran.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to raise is that I still have concerns about how these the areas are enforced for 20-mile-per-hour zones. I think it's really important that the MOG looks at like that in terms of how they're managed as well, because there are inconsistencies across Angus. There are inconsistencies within my ward, and also there are some areas that have 20 miles an hour that still have speeding issues as well. So I just want to also raise the fact that this solution that's being proposed might not be the kind of final answer to the issues that are going on in that village, and so would still need to be looked at within the MOG as well.
Thank you, Councillor Doran. Councillor Fotheringham.
Thank you, convener. Just to say, I will be supporting Councillor McLaren's amendment. Councillor Speed summed it up beautifully there. This community has waited 5 years plus for this, and I think bring it to a close and decide today. Thank you.
Any further comments? Okay, then we'll need to go to the vote, Elaine.
The motion, as proposed by Councillor MacDonald and seconded by Councillor Braze, is to note recommendations 1 to 3 of the report and agree to adopt option 1. The amendment, as proposed by Councillor McLaren and seconded by Councillor Doran, is Councillor Devine, apologies, is to accept recommendations 1 to 3 of the report and agree to option 2. Councillor MacDonald.
Motion.
Councillor Braze.
Motion.
Councillor Cowdy. Cruikshanks. Councillor Duff. Ham.
Amendment.
Councillor McLaren. Councillor Melville.
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl.
Amendment.
Councillor Proctor.
Amendment.
Councillor Doran.
Amendment.
Councillor Shepherd.
Motion.
Councillor Speed.
Amendment.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Whiteside.
Motion.
Thank you very much, everyone. And Mr. Nimmo White, that's your call to, that's the end of that item if you were liking to leave. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Convener, we've made a decision on that, and I'm happy enough to go with that decision. And congratulations to Mr. Nimmo for all his efforts that have borne fruit. But I did suggest that this committee might like to instruct, or might have the ability to instruct the member officer group to deal with a policy on 20 miles an hour as a priority. And I wondered if we could receive such an instruction today, rather than have to go through the rigmarole and waiting for another committee meeting.
So we've gone a little bit out of order, Councillor Braze.
Okay.
You should know better than that. We have a technical issue because Elaine here, his mic didn't work when we announced the result. So if we could just go through the result announcement, make sure that's clear, and then we'll come to your point in a second, okay?
Thanks, Convener. There were 5 votes for the motion, 11 votes for the amendment, so the amendment is carried. Thank you.
That's what I was saying, Mr. Nimmo White. That's that agenda item finished with. So yeah, you're free to leave if you'd like. On to Councillor Braze's point, the terms of sort of reference for the MOG can be set, I think, at this meeting. I think Graham's made the suggestion that that's something we could commit to. Is that correct, Graham?
Yeah, at least I would suggest in an informal basis. I think the members are all on this. The 6 members are all on this committee, sitting on this committee. So therefore, I think if there's a commitment to prioritising that, but I would refer to my colleagues if they in committee services in case they have any advice.
Councillor Doran's not, she's here right now.
Yeah, she's not on this committee, so she's not a member.
What she said.
Well, I think the likelihood of the MOG is that whoever is the chair of the MOG, if everyone is in agreement that's on the committee, that we do prioritise the 20 zones first. Is there any objections to the MOG members doing that? I see Councillor Doran shaking her head. For those online, everybody else is shaking their head. So in the first meeting of the MOG, we will make that commitment. And if there's any issues with legal or committee services or from officers, in the meantime, we'll make sure that that's addressed. But in this meeting right now, we will make that commitment, Councillor Bruce.
Thank you very much for that, convener.
Right, put me off my stride. We'll move on to the next agenda item. So we've gone from the agenda item 6, which is the petition and traffic calming, to agenda item 7, the review of commercial waste services and charges. Graham.
Thank you. This report brings forward proposals for adjusting charges levied by the Council for the collection and disposal of commercial waste. This is a report that we bring up on an annual basis. The reason it doesn't form part of the budget setting process is twofold. Firstly, it is slightly more complex, as outlined in the report, how we set the prices, but possibly more importantly, it allows us to invoice our customers, and just procedurally, we need an earlier decision for this. In terms of how they've been, the charges have been set, same as previous years. We are fulfilling our legal duty to fully recover our costs, but we've made every attempt to keep our services as efficient as possible and costs as low as possible, so they are both competitive, but also we recognise that we are providing an important service that helps our businesses to trade in Angus and to recycle as well.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any questions for Graham there? No questions. Any comments? Okay, no further comments. Then we'll move to the recommendation, which the recommendation is that we agree the application of the reviewed charges as detailed in Appendix 1. Are we happy to agree? Okay, great. We move on to agenda item 8, which is the Arbroath Harbour Port Marine Safety Code audit, and it's an all Graham day. So, Graham.
Thank you. This report presents the updated version of the Marine Safety Management System for Arbroath Harbour, along with the results of the 2024 Port Marine Safety Code audit carried out by the Council's designated person, which measure the Council's performance against the Port Marine Safety Code. I would highlight that, again, the performance has been found to be excellent in terms of compliance to the code, which again is outlined in the body of the report. And I would just pay thanks to Bruce Fleming, our Harbour Master, and his team at Arbroath Harbour for the excellent job they continue to do, and we recommend that committee approves the updated Marine Safety Management System, and Bruce does join me on the call if there are any questions.
Thank you, Graham, and I'd just like to echo the sentiments about Bruce and the work that his team do. It's absolutely brilliant. Any questions for Bruce or Graham on this one? No. Any comments? Councillor Cowdery.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so I am fortunate enough to be chair of the Arbroath Harbour Subcommittee at the minute, and I was also part of the audit, as people will see in this report. And so I just wanted to echo Graham's words and convener's words and give thanks to Bruce Fleming, who I know does a huge amount of work behind the scenes to come up with these reports and to ensure that we have got such a good performance here. And more generally, I just think it's a real shines a really good light on the harbour, which I think we can all agree is a huge asset, not only for Arbroath but for the whole of Angus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowdery. Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Actually, concur with what Councillor Cowdery said. It's a great privilege to actually go down there and see the harbour reviewed, Nick, and also for Bruce keeping people informed, putting out newsletters, etc. I think Arbroath Harbour to be congratulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. And I would just echo the comments. Having had a look at the report, it does look like an excellent report. I think the the gentleman from whatever it is, Southampton, who does it, I think is very meticulous, and I think he does a pretty thorough job. We had the pleasure as a committee of visiting the harbour sometime last year. It was a very good visit, very informative, and really very impressed with the way it's run. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Convener. Just touching on that visit a little bit more. The visit was also for members out with Arbroath that are on the committee, and I think I can say that there's buy-in across Angus for support for the harbour. Not just Arbroath, which is so important. It's almost budget time, and we do a great. This report highlights that we do a great job of maintaining the harbour. It's all traffic lights, it's all green with a little bit of yellow and no red, which is great reading. And Bruce the harbour master puts a lot of work into that. It's just great that there's consensus of how important the harbour is for Angus, and that investment will continue to come from this council, and the collegiate way in which we work on the harbour committee will continue also. I think, I'm comforted that, we've got our, what's the phrase, ducks in a row on this one perhaps. It's in a good place and will continue to be so, I'm sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. So we've had our higgledy-pigglies and our ducks in a row. Any further comments on the report? Okay, we'll move to the recommendations. So the recommendations are to approve the updated marine safety management system and note the results of the marine safety audit. Are we happy to approve and note? Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That concludes the meeting, and it's Alison's last meeting. Like, she's sat through it without actually having anything today. So thank you, Alison, for everything.
Hi, can you stop the live stream, please?